Welcome, IT changemakers, to the Dex Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, changemakers. It's Reality Bytes. We're bringing the band back together. We've got Oriana, we've got Megan, we've got Sean, and we've got Timbo. I say we laugh a little bit because I just said we've got Oriana, and Oriana just disappeared from our recording studio. And poor Oriana, we were having trouble last time around as well. So hopefully Oriana returns and it's all good. So look, one of the, I think I probably present a podcast because somewhere in me, when I was a kid, I quite liked the idea of being a DJ. I think it's probably true. And as such, when the suggestion was put forward by our very own Sean Malvey that we maybe do an episode on vibe coding, I think it felt, quite DJ-ish as a terminology to use. Which is no reason to do a podcast in and of itself. But then we did also have a fantastic episode, Tim and I, last week, where the conversational interface was our focus. The conversational interface is kind of just transforming the world as we know it right now. So when we looked into vibe coding, we thought about it. We thought this might be an interesting topic to pursue. But outside the name, Sean, outside the cool sounding term, what was your motivation for covering this topic? Why did it catch your eye?
Well, I think you and I, Tom, we trend towards more picking up vibes. We're vibes people.
Vibe orientated, 100%.
Not so much coding. So I think any way to bridge that gap, that was appealing to me. So
I like it.
Why I was interested in the topic. And yeah, so let's back up a second. So vibe coding,
a bit, yeah.
coined by earlier this year, coined by Andrej Karpathy. He introduced the term for vibe coding. It's an AI-assisted software development practice where developers use natural language prompts to guide an AI in generating, refining, and debugging code. And as Andrej said it, fully giving into the vibes, embracing exponentials, and forgetting that the code even exists. And let me just note too, so this is more than just kind of a fad. It is being used by companies like Meta, Google, IBM, and Microsoft. For some of the positives, people are saying, developers especially, that it speeds up prototyping. So if you want to throw away stuff, but you want to test out something quickly, this can speed up that process. Obviously, it opens up a lot of questions about if you're skipping over line by line in code, are you opening up the door for bigger problems later on? But, as a self-confessed idiot with some of these things, I find it to be very interesting, and I would love to vibe code one day.
Won't you vibe code with me? Yes, quite so. Tim, from an operational perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, does the vibe coding concept ring any alarm bells for you?
And so I started my educational career in software development. So my traditional coding goes way back, even though I didn't make a formal career out of it. And I get to kind of play the downer on all of this, right? The alarm bells. I did the same thing, Sean. I just to make sure I was in the right frame of mind, I Googled it. And came up with vibe coding as a software development approach where a user describes the desired functionality in natural language. So Tom, goes back to our episode last week where we're using language instead of a screen so much to generate things, and in this case, generate code. The thing that started my alarm bells was the last sentence of the description. This method accelerates the development of prototypes and applications, making coding more accessible. So that's the first thing that rang my alarm bell is the coder qualified to discern the output as viable and a quality product? I tested it. And I said, build me a website that does that creates an ROI model based on these metrics. And it came back with a website that had some interesting visible things to plug in data. But when I looked at the output and how it really was doing the mechanics behind the scene, it wasn't viable. But if you don't know, if you're not an ROI person or a coder, you really, if companies are relying on that method to generate their their applications, you're at the mercy of what the AI model gives you. So that was the first alarm bell for me. The second one, are you, and maybe it's kind of a linked to that concern, are you qualified enough as a coder if you've got to now take that as a template and take it on? Do you have enough ability to modify and improve the quality? Or are you just going to iteratively ask AI to make it better? No, that's not good enough. Make it better. So again, you're at the mercy of the AI model and the vibe coder to get the product. The other alarm bells, Tom, for me were, does it's in this kind of realm of making it more accessible. Is it really within their role? We've talked about shadow IT. We've talked about shadow AI. Now this could open up a whole new world of shadow applications. Is it really their role to develop an application? Are you starting to cross boundaries into other areas? Can a line of business say, I can't get my IT developers to create this application. I'm just going to go do it on our own. So security, governance, all of that stuff. Application sprawl is a concern. And then the last one is standardization. So in my previous organization at an insurance company, we had 5 businesses, and each of the businesses had their own application developers. And some used Java, and some used C++, and some used modern application platforms. And nobody followed the same standard. And that risk here is here as well. If this causes a splinter, and now you've got applications developed with different vibes, how do you handle integrations? How do you handle data sharing? How do you handle application support? It doesn't alleviate the need to apply standards and governances and controls to alleviate all of this. And those things are solvable, but it just making it more accessible to people opens up a whole can of worms that you've got to pay attention to.
Really well said, Tim. And it was very interesting. You alluded, as I did, to the last episode that we released, which was with Rob Wilson.
For Death of the Screen.
Yeah, the Death of the Screen was, they should have called the episode that. That's a good one. It was in fact called Agentic AI and the End of Traditional IT. And Rob Wilson is, among other things, the fascinating author of The Age of Invisible Machines. And it was a really eye-opening conversation for me. And it also connected very nicely with our chat with Pedro, Tim. And one of the things that the phrase Pedro used that then Rob kind of explored in more depth was this notion that AI differs from individual, real employees, from real people, in that AI has no skin in the game.
Right.
You know, and the workplace is going to continue to require people who take responsibility for outcomes, people who take responsibility for things. And I just wonder if that isn't really what you're flagging, right? Obviously, the functionality here is phenomenal, but that is going to require, as you say, standards. It's going to require the human in the loop ain't going anywhere in this particular process.
The human in the loop. And I'll use an example. If you're in California, on San Francisco, which I just was recently, Waymo taxis, driverless taxis are everywhere.
Yeah.
When a Waymo runs a red light or gets an offender bender, who gets the ticket? Where's the human in the loop to take accountability for that problem? Same thing with vibe coding, right? Or AI of any.
They say blame the passenger, Tim, but I'm on my own.
That's great.
I'm on my own there. Throw the passenger in jail. No? Come on.
Without a doubt, the passenger could have said, "Hey, run this red light." You don't know what they said.
Yeah. So it is interesting, and we definitely recommend people to check out that conversation with Rob Wilson. Oriana, fascinated, who is back with us, ladies and gentlemen, thankfully, fascinated to get your insights here. In the chat before the show, you did raise some concerns about the question of technical debt and legacy systems, and how I guess this interacts as a standardization challenge with this very, very aggressive novelty in coding. What are your general reflections and positions here?
Yeah, so the thing that really stood out to me when I started seeing this is, how does it scale? because of all of the issues that Tim has already raised, and because I really think about code in the context of really, really big, complex systems, right? I've only ever really worked in enterprise level software. It's never really worked in like websites or apps or anything where you can make this kind of fine tuning, experimental stuff without it risking really massive downstream effects. And every single person and place I've worked with has had ongoing issues of tech debt, challenges of improving legacy systems, um, and also a lot of human problems that go along with that, right? So I always think about it in terms of how do we make our systems human centered? And I think that some people are going to see vibe coding as the solution for that, right? Like, oh, well, it's going to be human centered because I'm going to customize it to what I want to do. But that isn't really what makes technology human centered, right? What makes technology human centered is having a process that understands what people actually need, not just what they think they need in the moment, that interacts with different things and like different components in a system in ways that are strategic and thoughtful and can last, right? And can be built on, right? Like, I think anybody who's really technical will tell you that an alarming amount of the internet is built on very tiny, fragile components where a very small, like a single issue in a single library can have cascading effects all over an industry. We're recording this right after having the Cloudflare outage, so
Yeah.
obviously we're feeling that very acutely right now. Um, but and I want to connect that to something that Dina mentioned. I'm going to quote Dina since she's not here to say it, but she said that one of the problems with vibe coding is that it can hurt decks because you're just getting code from nowhere without schema or context. And I think that schema and context is so important to building really robust code that you need, especially for anything complex.
100%. What do you think? Do you think putting these kinds of concerns, not necessarily to the side, but shelving them at least for the second, what to what degree do you think this is going to be able to answer the demand or reflect that demand for more custom solutions by employees themselves, and just for a more nuanced, reflective, personalized system?
Yeah, so I would say, have you ever used open source software? And have you used good open source software and bad open source software? So I listen to my podcasts on something called AntennaPod, which is an open source platform. It's really nice. It's super customizable. It's also a little bit of a pain sometimes because you can customize everything. Okay. Because it's an open source project and people wanted it to do all the things. And one of the reasons why I like it is also that it's quite lightweight. So this is a passion project. People have put a lot of effort into making it do these things in a way that is effective, right? Because it's a much smaller app than many others and it has all these customizations, but that requires a lot of skill and a lot of effort, right? So that's sort of my positive example. And even that is quite convoluted, right? And there's a lot of open source projects where you can see that it's a complete nightmare. It's buggy. It's got lots of overhead. It, doesn't have basic features that you really want. And then it has so much customization that it's completely impossible to learn how to use. And that's why I think that it's really important to have a concrete point of view and a united vision, even when you're trying to think about how to customize things to people.
Definitely. And any other things you can see where you would anticipate there could be an impact upon decks, the ability to effectively manage and monitor decks in an organization? Any ways it could jeopardize the use, for instance, of NextThink products or any other ITSM tools that you can think of?
Well, when I think of how it could have a negative interaction with decks, I think part of that is just, the dangers of shadow IT, the security stuff. A lot of the stuff Tim talked about immediately came to my mind in terms of it's very hard to monitor, manage, anticipate issues. And especially somebody who did previously work at a cybersecurity company, one of the things that is very true, cybersecurity, is that is much, much harder to defend because you're constantly trying to find every single hole, and you can never find all of the possible holes. And if you're poking holes into your systems at random at an alarming pace, that makes it really, really impossible to do security well. I do think the other side of DEX applications is sort of the IT perspective, right? So I think that's also a totally separate question in a way is, okay, well, how can vibe coding help people who want to automate processes, who want to have custom solutions and technical resources that they don't currently have, right? And I do think that's both a cool application, right? Like I do think it's a possible positive venue for democratizing coding in a way, but I do think that it needs systems in place to manage it to avoid all of these issues that we're highlighting.
I love it. We're moving inside out, I think, everybody. We started with all the cautionary elements, and we're moving towards the positive visionary usages. Megan, bring us all the way there, if you would. Putting some of these flaws to one side, what ways do you envisage or are you hearing about from the customers you speak to so often that vibe coding is beginning to help individuals or indeed organizations?
Wouldn't that be funny? I can't say that I've talked to anyone in our customer base that is using vibe coding at the enterprise level. And I think that that's probably due to the cautionary points that we've made so far. I think scalability, right? Like what Oriana just mentioned, and not to totally just non-answer your question, but another aspect of this that I was thinking about, obviously this vibe coding thing, I'm not a coder at all, so I don't think I would ever try it because I have no way of knowing if what the code it spits out is useful or not. But I think about my own use of these Gen AI tools, and I use them, right, to draft copy for me, to do writing, basically that's kind of the only thing I use them for, is to write stuff for me. And what I've learned from working with them for the last however long is you have to be really specific in what you want. If you just say, hey, write me an article about this thing, it's going to spit you out the most generic, boring, like unreadable, exactly with the word count you ask for article, with all the creativity stripped out of it. And you have to be very specific. I want an article that covers this thing for this audience and this tone and voice, cover X, Y, and Z. It's even better if you can give it an outline, and then it will, do something. But still, I mean, there's the whole thing like justice for the M dash, right? Like nobody uses M dashes anymore because it's such a sign that your writing was written by Gen AI and not by a human being. I think human beings bring a creativity that Gen AI just doesn't replicate. And I think we've talked about this before. And I'm not a coder, so I can't say whether that's happening with the vibe coding as well, if it's just sort of the dumbification of code output, like the way that it's become the dumbification of writing output. The things that Gen AI writes, they're just not that inspiring. They're not that fun to read. They're useful in certain contexts, right? Like a marketing copy, like a landing page or an email copy or whatever. It follows a standard setup. And so it's okay that it's not like the most thrilling and exciting thing you've ever read in your life. But I don't know. I think the beauty of having a human solve something is that we come up with a creative way to solve the problem. And that's the thing that I think our customers get excited about with DEX, is that it requires creative thinking to solve problems that previously IT didn't think they could solve. And now they hear a problem, like, actually, because we have this DEX data and we have this solution, we can solve for that. Vibe coding, I don't know. Maybe someone will hear me say this and come send me a message on LinkedIn with all the different ways that vibe coding has enabled them to be incredibly creative. And I would love to hear that. But to me, it seems just like another example of like, we're just dumbing down the output that we're getting out of these things. And every example I've heard of people using vibe coding has been to make those sort of small individual projects, a website that can generate a goofy image, an app that can generate something kind of silly. Or I've been reading articles about criminals using it to hack into things and ransom people, which obviously isn't what these companies want. So at the enterprise level, I think we're going to bump into all the things we've already identified in this conversation. And I have not heard about any of our customers using vibe coding for their own internal software.
Make it sound fun though. What did you use, Tim, for your experiment with it?
I don't remember which tool it was. I'd have to go back. It was It was a few months back. But it was very similar to Megan, what you're talking about, where the result that I got was very simplistic. It was not as robust as I needed it to be. And I really felt like pursuing that avenue to get something better was going to be a waste of my time, because it just wasn't going to get there that I would be able to do it much better. And that goes to the skill of the person asking the question. Maybe if I wasn't an ROI kind of a person, I would have pursued it for a lot longer. I think, Tom, it also plays into some of the things we've talked about. Does AI really make you more productive, or are you chasing something that feels more productive, but in the end, you're actually wasting more time?
Interesting. And I should add, congratulations to Vibe Coding for being the Oxford Dictionary Word of the Year 2025. But I will allow Sean to finish this conversation off with a prediction, Sean, as to whether vibe coding as a trend is about to come crashing down in the new year, or whether we've only seen the beginning of its rise.
I'm going to say we're only seeing the beginning, only because Meta, Google, IBM, and Microsoft are willing to put it into training modules and see what it can come back with. And they've done it before in the past where there's been big surprises. So if they're willing to tinker with it, let's not write it off just yet.
You don't want to go up against that collective might too strongly.
Yeah, there's something there.
Well, I think there's certainly something there, and I think there's certainly some guardrails suggested by the panel today, which we would all do well to keep in mind as we continue to experiment heartily with AI in so many different areas. But look, we've just come out of our, I would think of our series of shows marking our 200th episode as not just as the Deck Show, but as Reality Bytes as well. We all contributed together to reaching this incredible numerical milestone. And we're just entering that period of the year where things start to wind down. And we're going to hear, people who've been listening to the show for years know that this panel, we come together, we hash out the year that was 2025 and our highlights and our predictions for the next year. And we also, Tim and I will also be talking to returning show favorite Jeff Wright to hear how his year's going. Is that right? Tim might not even know that.
By now, we can assume he's the perennial year-end guest. Yeah,
exactly right. So we hope everybody listening joins us to those episodes. And thanks everybody for coming on to discuss vibe coding. And I'll see you very soon.
Bye.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.